Every message you send, every video you stream, every banking transaction, every military command, every secret whispered across continents. 95% of it does not travel through satellites in the sky. It travels here. Beneath the waves lies a hidden nervous system. Over 1,400 submarine cables, stretching nearly 1.5 million kilometers, binding the continents together in a fragile mesh of glass and copper. They are the arteries of the modern world. And yet, most of humanity does not even know they exist. A cable no thicker than a garden hose carries the economic weight of nations. This is the story of the silent war being waged in the deep. A war fought with anchors, with submarines, with sabotage. A war for control of the choke points that hold civilization together. The story begins in 1858. A wooden steamship struggles across the Atlantic, unspooling a thin copper wire wrapped in tar-soaked rope. When it finally reached Newfoundland, Queen Victoria sent a message to President Buchanan. It took 16 hours to transmit 99 words, but the world had just shrunk forever. By the early 20th century, the British Empire had weaponized this network. London controlled the global flow of information. During the First World War, one of Britain's first acts was to cut Germany's undersea cables, severing the Kaiser from the world. Copper gave way to coaxial. Coaxial gave way to glass. In 1988, the first transatlantic fiber-optic cable went live, carrying 40,000 simultaneous phone calls. Today, a single modern cable can carry over 200 terabits per second. The infrastructure grew quietly, invisibly, owned not by governments but by consortiums, telecom giants, and increasingly by a handful of American tech companies: Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft. The pipes of the internet had become privatized. The ocean is vast, but the cables are not spread evenly across it. They converge. They funnel into narrow geographic choke points where geography itself becomes a weapon. The Red Sea, the Strait of Malacca, the Luzon Strait, the English Channel. In these waters, dozens of cables run side by side, sometimes within meters of each other. A single well-placed anchor can sever the connections of an entire region. Consider the Red Sea. 16 cables pass through this narrow body of water, carrying an estimated 17% of all global internet traffic between Europe and Asia. In early 2024, 3 of them were cut simultaneously. Egypt is another bottleneck. Nearly every cable connecting Europe to Asia and East Africa makes landfall here, crossing overland through a country whose stability is far from guaranteed. One incident in 2008 saw 3 cables cut off the coast of Alexandria, slowing internet across the Middle East and India for weeks. And then there is the Luzon Strait, between Taiwan and the Philippines, the single most critical undersea corridor in the Pacific. Whoever controls these waters controls the digital lifeline of East Asia. On October 8, 2023, 2 cables running beneath the Baltic Sea were severed within hours of each other. The Baltic Connector gas pipeline was also damaged. Investigators traced the damage to a 6-ton anchor that had been dragged across the seafloor for 180 kilometers. The anchor belonged to a Chinese container ship, the New Polar Bear. It had sailed from a Russian port. The ship continued on its voyage. It was never stopped. Its crew was never questioned in person. Just over a year later, in November 2024, it happened again. 2 more cables. The Sea Lion 1 between Finland and Germany. The BCS East-West connecting Lithuania and Sweden. Both severed. A Chinese-flagged vessel, the Yipeng 3, was the prime suspect. It too had departed from a Russian port. European officials use careful diplomatic language. They call these incidents suspicious. They speak of gray zone warfare. The truth, whispered in defense briefings, is more direct. This is sabotage. Plausibly deniable, deliberately ambiguous, but coordinated. Russia operates a fleet most people have never heard of, the Main Directorate of Deep Sea Research, known by its Russian acronym GUJI. It commands specialized submarines and the Yantar, an oceanographic research vessel that NATO tracks obsessively. Wherever the Yantar goes, cables tend to suffer mysterious damage. China, meanwhile, has built a fleet of cable repair ships that double as surveillance platforms. And in 2023, Taiwan's outlying Matsu Islands lost all internet connectivity for 50 days, after two Chinese vessels severed both of the island's submarine cables within 6 days of each other. When a cable breaks, the world does not stop. Traffic reroutes, slows, congests, but the damage must be fixed. And the fleet of ships that can do this work is astonishingly small. Globally, there are only about 60 cable repair ships in active service. Many are over 20 years old. The skilled crews who splice fiber-optic strands in heaving seas number in the low hundreds. It is a profession with no replacement pipeline. A typical deep-sea repair begins with a grapnel, a hooked tool dragged along the seabed at depths of up to 8,000 meters. The damaged cable is hauled to the surface, cut, tested, spliced, and resealed. The process can take weeks, sometimes months, depending on weather, depth, and politics. And politics, increasingly, is the problem. Repair ships need permits to enter territorial waters. In contested regions, those permits can be delayed for weeks. China has reportedly slowed permissions for repairs in the South China Sea. Russia denies access to cables in waters it claims. A broken cable in the wrong neighborhood is a weapon. For most of the cable era, ownership was shared among telecom carriers in international consortiums. That model is dying. Today, hyperscalers, the giants of cloud computing, are laying their own private cables across the oceans. Google alone has invested in at least 25 subsea cable systems. Meta is a partner in more than 15. Together with Amazon and Microsoft, these 4 companies now own or lease the majority of new transatlantic and transpacific capacity built since 2016. This shift has consequences. Private cables are faster to build and serve specific corporate needs, but they also concentrate the world's communications infrastructure in the hands of a few American companies, subject to American law, American subpoenas, and American sanctions. China responded with its own ambitions. Huawei Marine, now rebranded as HMN Technologies, has built or upgraded over 100 cable systems. Beijing's plan, sometimes called the Digital Silk Road, aims to make Chinese-built and Chinese-owned cables the default for Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. What would happen if a major cable network were attacked all at once? Defense planners have wargamed this scenario for years. The conclusions are sobering. In a coordinated attack on the choke points around the United Kingdom, financial markets in London could go dark within minutes. Trillions of dollars in daily transactions would freeze. Hospitals, power grids, air traffic control all depend on data flowing through cables that could be severed by a single submarine in a single afternoon. In 2017, a British military report warned that a successful attack on undersea cables could result in catastrophic economic damage. The author, then a member of parliament, estimated the impact at hundreds of billions of pounds within days. And yet, the cables remain largely unguarded. There are no patrolling fleets above every choke point, no persistent surveillance over every meter of the seabed. The ocean is simply too big and the budget's too small. NATO has begun to respond. In 2024, the alliance launched a new maritime center for the security of critical undersea infrastructure. Britain commissioned a dedicated cable surveillance ship, the Proteus. Norway and Finland have expanded patrols of their territorial waters. New technologies are emerging: autonomous underwater drones that can patrol cables continuously, acoustic sensors woven into the cables themselves, capable of detecting an approaching ship anchor before it strikes, even quantum encryption to prevent tapping. But the fundamental vulnerability remains. The internet, this most modern and ethereal of human creations, depends entirely on physical objects lying on the ocean floor, exposed to currents, earthquakes, fishing nets, and the deliberate actions of hostile powers. The next great war may not begin with missiles or tanks. It may begin in silence, in the dark, with a ship dragging its anchor across a seabed nobody is watching. And by the time the world notices, half the internet may already be gone. The choke points are fragile, the defenders are few, and beneath the waves, the war has already begun.